קהל נכבד. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, please rise for His Excellency, the President of the State of Israel, Mr. Moshe Katsav and Mrs. Gila Katsav. They are accompanied by Mr. Dan David, founder of the Dan David Prize, and by Professor Itamar Rabinovich, President of Tel Aviv University. נא לשבת. תודה. Please be seated. Thank you. כבוד הנשיא, מכובדיי, גבירותיי ורבותיי, ערב טוב לכם, ברוכים הבאים לטקס הענקת פרס דן דוד לשנת 2006. Your Excellency, the President of the State of Israel, Mr. Katsav and Mrs. Katsav, Mr. and Mrs. David, honored laureates and guests, ladies and gentlemen, Shalom, good evening, and welcome to the 2006 Dan David Prize Award ceremony. We celebrate tonight the 5th anniversary of the Dan David Prize, 5 years of recognizing great cultural, artistic, and scientific achievements of humanity, 5 years of honoring great men and women who have explored the past, enhanced quality of life in the present, and envision social and scientific breakthroughs for a better future. Through the concept of time, the Dan David Prize is committed to continue to strive for a better world in the years to come.
לכל זמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים. עת ללדת ועת למות, עת לטעת ועת לעקור נטוע, עת להרוג ועת לרפור, עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות, עת לבכות ועת לשחוק, עת ספוד ועת רקוד, עת להשליך אבנים ועת כנוס אבנים, עת לחוות ועת לרחוק מחבק, עת לבקש ועת לאבד, עת לשמור ועת להשליך, עת לקרוע ועת לתפור, עת לחשות ועת לדבר, עת לאהוב ועת לשנוא, עת מלחמה ועת שלום.
Thank you, Carmela Capella and Nitzan Einhabar. It is an honor to call upon Professor Itamar Rabinovich, President of Tel Aviv University, to open the ceremony.
President Katsav and Mrs. Katsav, former Prime Minister Barak, Excellencies, the laureates, members of the Board of Governors of Tel Aviv University, dear guests, it's a pleasure to stand here for the fifth time to greet the winners of the Dan David Prizes, to greet the guests and the audience, and to watch the evolution of the prize from fledgling beginnings to maturation in the fifth year. And I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to share with you a very important development in the prize, a strategic partnership struck between the prize and Tel Aviv University and the French Republic. French Republic is becoming a strategic partner in the prize. The prize will remain headquartered at Tel Aviv University and will be managed from Tel Aviv University, but every other year it will be given in Paris, in the Opera Garnier. France will be represented on the board, and we have two guests with us, Mr. Dossonville from the Office of the Minister of Culture of France, and Mr. Hébert, the head of the Cité des Sciences, who together with the Opera Garnier will be our partners in the implementation of the prize ceremony in Paris. We think that this is very good for the prize, we think it's very good for Tel Aviv University, and we think that this is very good for French-Israeli relations. In recent years, there's been a marked improvement in that relationship, and we believe that this partnership and the fact that once every 2 years a major ceremony in cooperation with an Israeli university will take place in Paris will add yet another positive dimension to the evolution of that relationship. So I'm looking forward to our new form of cooperation with the French Republic, and I'm sure that as we stand here every other year in the coming years, we'll see an even better, more impressive prize. Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much, Professor Rabinovich. It is an honor to invite President Moshe Katsav to deliver his address.
It is my first time here in this ceremony. As a first year and second year, my speech was in English. Next year, the ceremony will be held in Paris, so it's my commitment to keep the balance, so my duty is to speak Hebrew tonight here. נשיא אוניברסיטת תל אביב, מר איתמר רבינוביץ', חתני הפרס, כלות, מר דן דוד, ראש הממשלה לשעבר, אהוד ברק, מכובדיי, אני מבקש לשבח פעם נוספת את אוניברסיטת תל אביב ואת מר דן דוד, אשר הצליחו תוך שנים מעטות להפוך את פרסי דן דוד לאחת הפרסים היוקרתיים בקהילת המדע והקהילה הבינלאומית. זאת משום שמקבלי הפרס הם אנשים בעלי מוניטין, שזכו לתהודה בינלאומית, והסיבה השנייה, העובדה שהפרסים ניתנים בתחומים מאוד מקוריים וייחודיים. ועל כן ראוי בעיקר מר דן דוד לשבח והערכה על ההתגייסות שלו, בדאגה שלו למורשת העבר, ליציבות ההווה ולפיתוח עתיד טוב יותר למען האנושות. בוודאי ששלושת הנושאים, עבר, הווה, עתיד, מדברים אלינו, בני העם היהודי. הם בוודאי מדברים אלינו, אזרחי ישראל. אנחנו מחברים את שלושת התקופות בהיסטוריה האנושית, ונדמה לי שאין עוד עם שיכול בקשר כל כך הדוק לדבר על מורשת מפוארת ועל ציפיות ותקווה, מורשת מפוארת מן העבר וציפיות תקווה אל העתיד. אתם מקבלי הפרס, אתם מקבלים הערב תעודות הכרה על הביטוי שנתתם להערכת העבר, על הסיוע שאתם נותנים לבני מין האנושי בתקופתנו ועל התקוות שאתם מעוררים ביחס לעתיד. אני מאמין שבידי מנהיגי העולם, אבל לא פחות מאשר בידי מנהיגי העולם, גם בידי אנשי המדע, אנשי הרוח, אנשי האומנות, העיתונאים, העיתונות, יש בידיהם מפתח לאיכות חיים, יש בידיהם את המפתח כדי להבטיח לבני המין האנושי לחיות על פי הערכים האנושיים האוניברסליים, בחופש, ללא פחד. לדאבוננו הרב, השנים האחרונות היו שנים קשות עבור בני המין האנושי, ונדמה לי שבידי מקבלי הפרס ודומיהם ושכמותם נמצא המפתח כדי להבטיח עתיד טוב יותר. אני גאה באופן מיוחד, שאלתי את איתמר רבינוביץ' על מקבלי הפרס בתחום המלחמה בסרטן. האנושות משקיעה בנושא הזה כבר עשרות שנים מחקרים, משקיעה משאבים כמעט בלתי נדלים. והאנושות הצליחה ב100 השנים האחרונות וגם בעשור האחרון במגוון רחב של תחומים, בעיקר במחלות זיהומיות, להדביר את אותן מחלות ולהביא מזור לאנושות. ואני מקווה שגם שני מקבלי הפרס בתחום הזה, ג'ון מנדלסון ויוסף שלזינגר, יצליחו לטעת איזושהי בשורה לאנושות. שני מקבלי פרס נובל למדע הישראלים, פרופסורים צ'חנובר והרשקו, קיבלו לפני שנתיים את פרס נובל למדע על מחקרים שהם ביצעו לפני 30 שנה ויותר. לקח לוועדת השופטים 30 שנה כדי להגיע למסקנה שהם ראויים לפרס נובל למדע. אני מקווה מאוד שהמחקרים בשנים האחרונות נותנים בשורה חדשה לאנושות ומבטיחים התרפאות מן המגפה הזאת שאוכלת כל חלקה טובה. אבל לא רק מחלות חשוכות מרפא, האנושות צריכה להתמודד גם עם בעיות עוני קשות ומחריפות, ולדאבוננו הרב בעשור האחרון גם עם טרור קשה שפוגע בעולם. אני מאמין שמקבלי הפרס, שהם באים מארצות שונות, ממגוון עיסוקים שונה, דווקא למדינת ישראל, יש בהם כדי לבטא את הרוח של האנושות כולה, את רוח הערכים האוניברסליים, כאשר כל אחד מהם ממקבלי הפרס מדבר שפה שונה ומגיעים מפינה אחרת בעולם, וכל אחד בתחומו, בדרכו, בסגנונו המיוחד, הם יכולים להבטיח את האחווה הבין-אנושית בסגנונם. בשנים האחרונות, לצערנו הרב, מתפתחת מגמה של ארגונים קיצוניים בעולם לשלוט, רצון לשלוט, רצון להשליט את האידיאולוגיה הקיצונית שלהם על האנושות. הם מנצלים לרעה את הגלובליזציה, מנצלים לרעה את ערכי הדמוקרטיה, את המוסר האנושי, את הטכנולוגיה המודרנית, והם עלולים להמיט אסון חדש על האנושות, כפי שלא ידענו אותם מעולם, וחלק ממקבלי הפרס, נדמה לי שהם כבר ביטאו רגישות והבנה לבעיה הזו. ברור שחופש הדת, חופש הדיבור, זכויות פרט, חופש ההגירה, הם לא חופש להסתה, לאנטישמיות, לגזענות, לטרור, לתכנון פיגועים. הרושם שלי הוא שלפעמים יש בעולם החופשי דווקא גישה נאיבית ביחס לתופעות המסוכנות האלה שמתפתחות והולכות ממש לנגד עינינו, ואני מקווה שמנהיגי העולם החופשי, כמו קהילת המדע העולמית, אנשי האקדמיה, במקום לאיים חרם על ישראל, משום שאנחנו רוצים להיאבק בטרור, למנוע טרור, הם יפקחו עיניים ויראו את המציאות כהווייתה. אני מאחל למקבלי הפרס הצלחה רבה, ואני בטוח שעוד נשמע להם בפורומים כאלה ואחרים במרוצת הזמן. בהצלחה רבה.
תודה רבה, כבוד הנשיא. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And now it is an honor to call upon Mr. Dan David, founder of the Dan David Prize, to deliver his address. Mr. Dan David.
Mr. President and Mrs. Katsav, Mr. Jean d'Ausonville and Mr. Jean-François Hébert, representatives of the French Ministry of Culture and Communications, ambassadors, laureates of our prize, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. First of all, a small personal note. This is not my normal voice. I went through a whole winter in cold Europe and I never caught a cold. I come to this beautiful, nice weather, warm weather in Israel, and from a very strongly air-conditioned room, I have this result. So, sorry, bear with me, please. As many of you will remember, we announced the launch of our prize here at the campus of the Tel Aviv University in May 2001. And today, we are celebrating our 5th award ceremony. 5 years with so many fond recollections. Professor John Brenner and Sir Sidney Sulston, our first laureates for the Future Time Dimension, receiving the Nobel Prize 6 months after our first award ceremony. May 2003, Professor Michel Brunet, from this stage, raising in his hand the School of Tumai and sharing with us the shivering emotion of seeing our oldest ancestor, the first hominid, 7 million years old. I recall how moving it was to see James Nachtwey impressive photos from various front wars, taken at his personal physical risk, and he was seriously wounded the year after our ceremony. Professor Klaus Schwab, creating in parallel with the World Economic Forum, the Young Leaders Forum, with the proceeds of our prize. The historical legacy of Jerusalem, Rome, and Istanbul being recognized here. Professor John Bakal, who unfortunately is not among us anymore, giving in the spirit of the prize so much of his time and knowledge to the young researcher in this same field. Last year, the nomination of Peter Brook, drawing the attention of the Israeli and world theater. Professor Israel Finkelstein, bringing us into his studies and interpretation of biblical history, which drew huge interest from general and professional media. There are many memories and many more names. The main concept which links these names, the main idea of our prize is time. the time dimension. Also this year, our laureates continue to represent the foremost achievements that humanity reaches in understanding our past, in building our present, in dreaming our future. Professor Mendelssohn and Schlesinger are dreaming with us about a future when medicine finally defeats cancer. We are following journalists, Michnik, Mohammad, Alam, Gonzalez, who in their countries and around the world are building day after day a free press. While the prize works to connect humanity through the three time dimensions, Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Trail uses the space dimension, connecting 20 nations together through the Silk Road Trail, and shows us that we cannot dispense of each other any more than we can dispense of our past, of our present, and of the consequences those have on our future. In this light, in today's globalized world, that an agreement was signed last February between the Dan David Foundation and the French government, represented by the Minister of Culture and Communication. As you heard, the first of the alternate ceremonies will take place in Paris on March 8, 2007. It is of significance for me that next year's award for the past, Historians' Prize, will be awarded in France, the birthplace of modern history writing. This collaboration will be, we hope, a first step in creating new exchanges between France and Israel, with the direct cooperation of one of the world's foremost science museums, la Cité des Sciences et de l'Industrie, whose president, Mr. Hebert, is among us tonight. Colloquiums and exhibitions related to the work of the prize laureates will be organized in Tel Aviv and in Paris. And tomorrow, another day, as we say, our laureates will donate, they will donate 10% of their prizes to young researchers in their own field. We will also present our foundation awards to even younger nominees. Young high school students who participated for the second year with 600 beautifully written essays naming and arguing for their preferred hero or preferred field in the three time dimensions. It is my belief, my sincere belief, that these youngsters can be inspired by the knowledge of the past, become aware of the challenges of the present, and be a source of hope for the future. I am extremely pleased that we are able to help these young people to continue their studies, hopefully achieve their dreams, and who knows, perhaps one day be the recipients of the main Dan David Prize. These were the words I wanted to exchange with you about the past 5 years of the prize. In 50 years' time, I will not be here with you, but I'm sure that also by then, and I hope that also in 500 years' time, somebody will address the audience, mentioning what humanity accomplished and how the prize encouraged and highlighted those accomplishments year after year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dan David. And now I have the pleasure to call upon Monsieur Jean d'Aussonville, Advisor to the Minister of Culture, Government of France.
je crois que je parlerai français. En réalité, je ne suis que l'ambassadeur de France à Tel Aviv. Je ne suis pas M. d'Ossonville, qui a décidé de me laisser la responsabilité de ce discours. Monsieur le Président de l'État d'Israël et Madame Gila Katsav, Monsieur le Premier ministre Ehud Barak, Monsieur le Président de l'Université de Tel Aviv, Monsieur le Président de la Fondation Dan David, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, Mesdames et Messieurs les lauréats, Mesdames et Messieurs, c'est un très grand honneur pour la République française d'accueillir désormais la cérémonie de remise du prix Dan David en alternance avec l'Université de Tel Aviv. Renaud Dondieu de Vabre, ministre français de la Culture et de la Communication, aurait voulu venir lui-même à cette cérémonie, mais a été retenu par le Festival de Cannes, qui, comme vous le savez, constitue un des grands moments de l'année culturelle française. Je voudrais vous dire en son nom à quel point les autorités de la République française, le monde culturel et la communauté scientifique française mesurent l'honneur, la chance, mais aussi la responsabilité que la France partagera désormais avec Israël en étroite association avec l'Université de Tel Aviv dans l'accueil, le soutien et la mise en valeur du prix Dan David. Comme vous l'avez indiqué, Monsieur Dan David, la première cérémonie en France aura lieu le 8 mars 2007 à l'Opéra Garnier, en présence des plus hautes autorités de la République française. Nous avons décidé pour cet événement exceptionnel de vous présenter le corps de ballet de l'Opéra de Paris, présentation qui n'a lieu qu'une fois par an, et un nouveau ballet de Roland Petit qui fera son entrée dans le répertoire de l'opéra. Comme le savent ceux qui étaient à Tel Aviv cette semaine, la France a lancé une saison française en Israël. La question que je pose est tout à fait académique, dans la mesure où si vous étiez à Tel Aviv, vous êtes obligé de le savoir, puisque cet événement a créé le plus grand embouteillage de l'histoire de l'État d'Israël. Ce n'est pas la responsabilité de la France, je m'empresse de l'ajouter. Ce lancement de la saison française a été accompli en présence de M. Douste-Blazy, ministre des Affaires étrangères. Il témoigne, comme la décision de remettre à Paris le prix Dan David, il témoigne de la détermination des autorités françaises de poursuivre l'amélioration des relations bilatérales entre la France et Israël. Amélioration du dialogue politique et désormais amélioration des relations entre les deux sociétés dans le domaine de la vie culturelle, universitaire et scientifique, et plus particulièrement dans le cas qui nous intéresse, entre la Cité des sciences et de l'industrie et l'Université de Tel Aviv, dont nous connaissons et apprécions l'importance et le rayonnement exceptionnel. Vous pouvez être assurés que nous serons attentifs à l'esprit et aux traditions qui ont déjà pris forme en 5 ans dans l'organisation de cette cérémonie sous les auspices de l'Université de Tel Aviv, et nous souhaitons que les cérémonies qui auront lieu à Paris s'inscrivent dans le même esprit de collégialité, de complicité que vous avez su créer. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, the generation gap is a typical characteristic of humanity. This phenomenon is illustrated in the dance Sejera, performed by the Inbal dance troupe. The older generation preserves tradition and heritage, as symbolized by the dry twigs carried on their heads. The younger generation rebels, striving to create its own way of life. Inbal deals with material related to Jewish tradition and heritage and with the folklore of the varied ethnic groups in Israel. Inbal was created in 1951 by Sarah Levi Tanai, who intertwined ancient, folk, modern, and original elements into her choreography. The Staggered dance embodies this medley of influences. Choreographer Ilana Cohen, composer Shlomo Bar. Inbal Danstrup, thank you very much. The specific field for the pastime dimension of the Dan David Prize for the year 2006 is preserving cultural heritage. The International Review Committee, chaired by Dr. Vartan Gregorian, president of the Carnegie Corporation of New York, could not have reached a more appropriate decision than the selection of Mr. Yo-Yo Ma for the 2006 Dan David Prize for the pastime dimension. This is Let me praise him first. This is to witness that on the 21st day of May 2006, the Dan David Prize for 2006 for outstanding achievements in the service of humanity, advancement of the frontiers of knowledge, and the universal goals of excellence, creativity, humanism, and progress is awarded for the pastime dimension in the field of preserving cultural heritage to Mr. Yo-Yo Ma, musician, educator, and cultural explorer, for founding the Silk Road Project and illuminating the heritages of the countries that were touched by the Silk Road, for identifying the voices and customs that represent those traditions today, thereby ensuring that they will not be lost, but rather celebrated and cherished as part of the human heritage, and for transforming the act of cultural preservation into a worldwide event, building bridges of understanding and appreciation between nations, cultures, various ethnic groups, and societies.
Welcome Yo-Yo Ma and Yu Cheng Ma.
7-year-old Yo-Yo performed with his sister in the presence of former President Eisenhower and President Kennedy and his wife.
I've learned in music is that one of the core values in music is that you're always going towards something bigger than yourself. To go to the past to see the vast past, to go towards the future and see a future we don't know, and to exist in the present when we know only so much and then there's so much we don't know. That's a very positive thing because it leaves us enough to wonder about, to be curious about, to care about. I think there are great engines in the world. Political engine is obviously unbelievably important. Economic engines are incredibly important. But I would also like to suggest that cultural engines, I think the cultural engine is very interesting because you can actually go through time. I think in many ways when people say East or West, Persian, Greek, Indian, Mongolian, whatever it is, it implies there's a barrier, there's a boundary. And in order to go inside, you need trust and you need friendship. I don't think Western and non-Western. I just listen to music. Music to me is really about sound and notes, but even more so, it's about expression. So I'm always trying to figure out what someone is trying to express. We actually need to forge the links of the heart that actually are lasting, are sustainable. And that's where I think working in a cultural vein, which is always very complicated because how do you communicate? How do you know what's important to somebody else? But once you figure it out, I think there's very good value in this kind of work.
It is an honor to invite Professor Itamar Rabinovich, President of the Tel Aviv University, to the stage to present the award. I have the honor to invite to the stage the recipient of the prize, Mr. Yo-Yo Ma. Thank you very much, Professor Rabinovich. You're invited to return to your seat after having embraced the winner. And Mr. Ma, I have the pleasure... Professor Rabinovich, please take your seat. Thank you. Unless he wants to thank on your behalf. I invite you, Mr. Yo-Yo Ma, to remain on stage and to address the audience in English and, how should I say it, in the other language of which you are master. Let me put this one here.
Thank you very much. President and Mrs. Katsav, Mr. and Mrs. David, Professor and Dr. Rabinovich, fellow laureates, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to accept this prize and am proud to share it with the musicians, staff, and board members of the Silk Road Project. I would also like to thank the Inbal Dance Troupe for their extraordinary performance and to help bridge the generation gap. Thank you so much. The criterion for this visionary award, preserving cultural heritage, has a truly global reach. Cultural heritage can never belong to any one person or any one group. While we may each like to think of our heritage as our own, ultimately we share it with the world. The piece I just played, the Sarabande from Bach's Fifth Suite, reinforces this notion of common world heritage. The Sarabande has its own story to tell. The music originated in North Africa. In Spain, it became a lascivious dance, and then was transformed in France into a courtly dance. Each culture has adopted the music, investing it with specific meaning, but they must share ownership. It does not belong to a single culture. Particularly fitting, this sarabande has become part of the heritage of Israel as well. My hero, Pablo Casals, chose to play it for Golda Meir in the famous documentary, Music in Jerusalem. To him, it told a story neither lascivious nor courtly, but one of struggle and humanity ending on a note of hope. He, a Catalan musician, played for her, the Prime Minister of Israel, a piece written by a German composer from a form that had traveled from North Africa to Spain and then to France to tell a story in Israel that resonated throughout the world. Exploration of our common world heritage drives the Silk Road Project. Through the search, we not only learn about new traditions, but we more profoundly understand our own. This combination of internal and external discovery drives creativity. When the World's Fair came to Paris in 1889, the young composers Debussy and Ravel were exposed to the Javanese gamelan for the first time. Inspired by this experience, these two composers helped to develop a new form of expression filled with the sounds, colors, and harmonies they had encountered. It is this progression of discovery and invention that we nurture at the Silk Road Project. This morning, members of the project and I arrived in Tel Aviv from Baku, Azerbaijan. Our trip to Baku was the culmination of a journey similar to that of Debussy and Ravel. The singer, Alim Kazimov, is one of the great masters of the Mugam tradition, the classical music of Azerbaijan. When we first heard Alim, we were transported by his performances into the ecstatic. None of us could quite understand the style, though, let alone participate. Over the years, Alim has become a generous guide to us, sharing his knowledge and bringing us inside his tradition. As we have entered the world of Azeri classical music, we have not only broadened our awareness, but also deepened our understanding of the traditions we grew up with. As a result, we feel more connected to the human family around the world. It is, of course, fitting to have this conversation in Israel, a country infused with ideas and cultures brought by immigrants from Europe, Asia, Africa, and even the Americas. It is a society of ancient traditions and modern ideas whose culture is based in both. Israel is a manifestation of the Silk Road and clearly illustrates that the more richly we understand the past, whether our own or our neighbors, the more brilliantly we can imagine the future. Here, as around the world, we're all neighbors culturally, and it is our shared past that will inspire what is to come. Today, many cities across the globe contain populations from around the world and derive strength from their diversity. I'm thrilled that through the generosity of the Dan David Foundation, the Silk Road Project will be able to celebrate shared heritage and cultural exchange in one such world city, Chicago. There, for the first time, the mayor has joined the city's leading cultural and educational institutions to embrace and host a year-long exploration of our common world heritage called Silk Road Chicago. What is Silk Road Chicago? It's a celebration of imagination and creativity. It's about the accidental meetings that change people's lives. It's about transformation, and it's about wonder, and it's about getting people to dream, to imagine something they know, or to imagine something fresh that has never been done before. I'd like to thank Mr. David and the Dan David Prize Committee both for the great honor you have bestowed upon us and for the privilege of being able to continue this cultural work. In gratitude and in celebration, I'd like to close with a joyful jig, the jig from the Third Suite by Bach, another transnational dance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yo-Yo Ma. You're welcome. Thank you very much, violinist Sanyas and the Kesem violinists. The specific field for the present-time dimension of the Dan David Prize 2006 is journalists of print media. The International Review Committee for the present-time dimension, chaired by Professor Nicholas Lehman, Dean of the Graduate School of Journalism of Columbia University, New York, has selected Mr. Magdi Alam, Ms. Monica Gonzalez, Mr. Adam Michnik, and Mr. Guanawan Muhammad as the laureates of the 2006 Dan David Prize for the present-time dimension. The 4 journalist laureates were selected for being pioneers in the struggle for democracy and press freedom. This is to witness that on the 21st day of May 2006, the Dan David Prize for 2006 for outstanding achievements in the service of humanity, advancement of the frontiers of knowledge, and the universal goals of excellence, creativity, humanism, and progress is awarded for the present-time dimension in the field of journalists of print media to Mr. Magdi Alam for being an author, prolific journalist and editor, consistently speaking out against extremism and in favor of tolerance and coexistence. To Ms. Monica Gonzalez for being a top investigative reporter in Latin America, particularly in Chile, and for her courage in reporting on human rights and democracy. To Mr. Adam Michnik for his activism in support of freedom of speech and the press, and for speaking out against the dangers of totalitarianism. To Mr. Guanawan Muhammad for being a poet, writer, journalist, and activist, and one of the world's leading voices of modern Islam. It is an honor to invite to the stage Mr. Dan David and Mr. Ariel David, a journalist himself, to present the awards. I now have the honor to invite to the stage Mr. Magdi Alam. Thank you. Please stay on stage, Mr. Alam. I now have the honor to invite to the stage Ms. Monica Gonzalez. I now have the honor to invite to the stage Mr. Adam Michnik. I now have the honor to invite to the stage Ms. Gwanawan Muhammad. We'll take now one more picture of the whole group together with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dan David and Mr. Ariel David. And I have the honor to invite Mr. Magdi Alam to stay on stage, please, and address the audience on behalf of the recipients of the 2006 Dan David Prize for the Present Time Dimension. Mr. Magdi Alam.
Your Excellencies, President of the State of Israel and Mrs. Katsav, former Prime Minister Mr. Ehud Barak, Mr. and Mrs. Dan and Gabriela David, President of Tel Aviv University Mr. Itamar Rabinovich, distinguished guests, dear friends, on behalf of all laureates, journalists, and members of the Present Time Division, I would like to tell you that we are honored and proud to be here tonight for this important and Nobel Prize, the International Dan David Prize. Reading the motivation of the prize and pondering about Israeli reality, it turns out that all of us believe in the value of the holiness of everybody's life and want to defend everybody's right to live and to be free. The strong message of this prize is that life and freedom are the pillars of the common civilization of man. Dear friends, I do not hide that I am deeply moved as an Italian citizen of Egyptian origin, of Muslim faith with a secular way of thinking, to witness here in Israel my strong and straight defense of the right of Israel to exist. To me, my dear Israeli friends, my dear Jewish friends, your battle for the right of Israel to exist goes along my battle for the right of everybody's life, since the Manichaean and nihilist ideology that denies the right of Israel to exist and feeds terrorism against Jews is the same ideology of the refusal of the other, of hate and violence that kills Christians and Muslims, Westerners and Arabs all over the world. The message that we want to send and spread all over the world is that the value of life has to be either for everybody or for nobody. Recent events in Middle East are teaching us that people start to attack Jews, then Christians, then secular Muslims accused to be apostate and betrayers, until they come to legitimate the killing of all Muslims that do not accept terrorist tyranny. We do not have to forget that in global Islamic terrorism, even if all killers are Muslims, most of the victims are Muslim as well. Since we do care for the right of everybody's life, Israelis, Palestinians, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Westerners, Orientals, we have to work together to uproot hate which is feeding terrorism. We must say aloud that terrorism is never justified and never right, that terrorism is always aggressive and never reactive. We must say aloud that terrorism, since it denies the right to live of other people, cannot be put on the same level of the victims of terrorism who defend their right to live. Time has come for the international community to consider global Islamic terrorism as a crime against humanity. Time has come for all civilized nations in the world to consider the denial of the right of Israel to exist and the threat to destroy Israel as crime against humanity. Dear friends, we have to realize that there is a war going on between global Islamic terrorism, which denies our right to live and to be free, and us. There is no time left to compromises about the value of life, and there is no time left to make concession on the right of Israel to exist. Only if we stress the right of Israel to exist, we shall stress everybody's right to live. This is the reason why, my dear friends, today Israel is the divide between civilization and barbarity, between culture of life and the culture of death, between good and evil. Today, more than ever, all people who honestly want a state for Palestinians, first of all, they have to foster the right of Israel to exist. Today, more than ever, all the people who honestly want a free and democratic Arab and Muslim world, first of all, they have to foster the right of Israel to exist. Today, more than ever, all the people who care for a common civilization of men, first of all, they have to foster the right of Israel to exist. Dear President Moshe Katsav, dear Dan and Gabriella David, dear Itamar Rabinovich, dear friends, we, the laureates of the present time Ben David Prize 2006, we say, thank you, Israel. We say, we love Israel. We say, we are all Israelis. We say, life to Israel. We say, Am Israel Chai.
Thank you ever so much, Mr. Magdi Alam. I wish to introduce the singer, Ms. Tami Rimon. Ms. Rimon is a cancer survivor who was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1996. She has since produced a film in which she delivers a message of struggle and hope, supporting self-empowerment for women with cancer. Tami Rimon.
When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care, and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. You've got a friend.
I wish to introduce Mr. Johnny Phillips, a veteran of English language theatre and TV in Israel.
I am a cancer survivor. It is now 5 years since my left lung was removed. A program for the early detection of lung cancer saved my life. I now live in a world where there is growing confidence that the quality of life and the hopes of a cure for cancer patients everywhere will be ever increasingly enhanced by the introduction of newer and more effective drug treatments. It was Israel's first president, Chaim Weizmann, who once said, "A person may endure great suffering as long as there is a glimmer of hope." And there is hope. As the founder of the Cancer Crusade organization so eloquently puts it, cancer is not who I am. It is only a bend in the road that is my life's journey. I will not give in to fear, and I will not be discouraged by setbacks. I will be thankful for the things that have come my way, the people I would never have known, the love I'd never been still enough to witness, the humility I needed, the strength I thought I had lost, the courage I never knew I had. I will remember that I can still have fun, and it's okay to be silly. And above all, I will remember that while I may have cancer, cancer does not have me. That is the lesson I've learnt, and it serves me well.
I've often asked myself the reason for the sadness in a world where tears are just a lullaby. If there's any answer, maybe love can end the madness, maybe not. Oh, but we can only try. You've got to get up every morning with a smile on your face and show her all the love in your heart. People gonna treat you better. You're gonna find, yes you will, that you're beautiful. Yes, you're beautiful. That you're beautiful as you feel. Yes, you're beautiful. That you're beautiful. As you
Thank you, Gadi Goldman, piano and musical director of this evening, Gilad Efrat, contrabass, Nitzanein Habar, saxophone, Tami Rimon, and Johnny Phillips. The specific field for the future time dimension of the Dan David Prize for 2006 is cancer therapy. The International Review Committee for the Future Time Dimension was chaired by Nobel Prize laureate Professor Aharon Shechanover of the Technion Institute of Technology, Haifa, and included also Nobel laureate Professor Philip Sharp. The committee made a highly successful choice of two distinguished cancer researchers, Dr. John Mendelsohn, president of the M.D. Anderson Cancer Center of the University of Texas, and Dr. Yosef Schlesinger, chairman of the Department of Pharmacology, Yale University School of Medicine. This is to witness that on the 21st day of May 2006, the Dan David Prize for 2006 for outstanding achievements in the service of humanity, advancement of the frontiers of knowledge, and the universal goals of excellence, creativity, humanism, and progress is awarded for the future time dimension in the field of cancer therapy to Dr. John Mendelsohn for being a pioneer in the area of antibody-mediated cancer therapy and making seminal discoveries that antibodies to growth factors prevent stimulatory signaling pathways, thereby inhibiting the growth of cancer cells, for shedding light on several of the multiple mechanisms of action of such antibodies, and for developing antibody-based anti-cancer drugs for clinical use.
I first got interested in biomedical research when I was in college. That got me hooked on a career plan that led to medical school and led to my feelings that I wanted to dedicate my life to using molecular biology to improving the treatment of human disease. Cancer care is an ever-changing area in medicine. I really had the privilege of starting my career at a time when there was no field of cancer care. I guess the most pivotal event in my research career occurred around 1980 when I teamed up with a group of investigators at the University of California, San Diego, including Dr. Gordon Sato, to develop the hypothesis that we might be able to inhibit the growth of cancer cells by blocking the tyrosine kinase activity of the EGF receptor. I've been able to play a role in directing our vision toward taking advantage of the Genome Project discoveries and all the new technologies to really apply science to improve care of patients. During the past 50 or 60 years, we've changed the paradigm completely. Now we're trying to find this disease early before it is detectable with symptoms or by seeing a lump growing in one's body. I see this as getting more and more important. We're going to be assessing risk in patients before they ever have cancer and trying to find it earlier. And of course, once it's detected earlier, it's easier to treat and more successfully treated. And someday we may even be able to find out about propensities to cancer and risk of cancer before the disease has even started. We'll never eliminate cancer. Are we going to change the course of cancer? Yes. Cancer will be detected earlier. It'll be treated more effectively. There will be increases in cures. And that's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years probably. But we'll never win the war. We're always going to have to deal with cancer. Today, with the complexities of research and the wonderful instrumentation that's available, it's really important for scientists to collaborate. There are certainly many things that pull us apart, but research is an area where I think everyone in the world can join together with a common goal that we all share.
The 2006 Dan David Prize for the Future Time Dimension in the field of cancer is awarded to Dr. Josef Schlesinger for being a pioneer in the area of signal transduction and making seminal discoveries on how growth factor receptors are activated and how they stimulate cells, for connecting these findings to mechanisms underlying malignancy, and for developing drugs for clinical use that inhibit growth factor signaling.
Ever since I was a kid, I was interested in science, and I went to university to study chemistry and physics, and subsequently I became biology, as this was the focus of attention of my interest at later time. I thought it is really fascinating to discover laws of nature. I thought it is fascinating to discover new potential treatment for people, illnesses. This was a time where atomic physics and the atomic bombs have been so much described, so I thought that harnessing this huge energy is fascinating. So my imagination was really having a good time reading all these things. My field specifically is what we define as signal transduction. This is a process where we study all the interconnections, the mechanisms that govern how cells communicate between each other and how communication occurs within the cell. Signal transduction is at the core of almost every aspect of biology, and therefore many diseases are caused by dysfunction in signal transduction. Cancer is a major link to dysfunction in growth control. Atherosclerosis, which also is a problem of growth, arthritis, bone disorders, severe developmental disorders. Almost every disease has a link to some aspect of signal transduction. For example, a treatment that will be very good for one subtype will not be good for another subtype. So one has to do what we call personalized medicine, where you identify the subtype and then use the drug which is necessary for that subtype, and this subtype of cancer would only be treated. Eventually we will have cocktails and combination of drugs for all the subtypes. Now we don't have all of them. Scientists who work on the most fundamental questions, at their brain, they always think for an opportunity how this work can lead to a new disease. So you have to let the scientists use their imagination, and then once they see and seek an opportunity, they will be able to. So always I thought that my work, if once it will have a potential to do good for people, I will take advantage of that, and this is what happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to invite to the stage Professor Dani Leviatan, Rector of Tel Aviv University, and Professor Yitzhak Witz, Scientific Advisor to the Dan David Prize, who will present the award to the Future Time Dimension laureates. I have the honor to invite to the stage the recipient of the prize, Dr. John Mendelsohn. I have the honor to invite to the stage the recipient of the prize, Dr. Yosef Schlesinger. Thank you very much, Professor Leviathan, Dr. Witz, and Dr. Schlesinger. And I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. John Mendelsohn to remain on stage and address the audience on behalf of the Future Time Dimension laureates.
President and Mrs. Katsav, President and Dr. Rabinovich, and Mr. and Mrs. Dan David, fellow laureates, faculty, and distinguished guests, on behalf of Dr. Schlesinger and myself, thank you very, very much for this wonderful prize. Mr. David, you have done something very unusual with this type of award, bringing together people from different backgrounds, with different interests, that share one thing passionately: to make this a better world. Thank you, Mr. David. Now, you've heard some sublime music from one of our awardees, and you've heard an incredibly brave statement of anti-terrorism and the right of all nations and all people to live in peace from another recipient. And those are hard acts to follow. I'm going to spend a few minutes trying to give you hope for the future in the field of cancer in which I work. Couldn't have said this 20 years ago, but today scientists do understand the cause of cancer. Cancer is caused by the abnormal function of genes and gene products that control cell growth and proliferation, and also abnormalities in the repair of these genes. Now, the Human Genome Project, as you know, I'm sure, has identified that in each of our bodies there are about 30,000 genes. About 500 of those genes are very important for controlling the growth and proliferation and proper behavior of cells. Other genes control our hair color and our IQ and our muscles and all the other things that go on in our bodies. Now, cancer, we believe, is a disease where about half dozen out of those 500 key genes are functioning improperly, sometimes because of inherited abnormalities and sometimes because of acquired abnormalities such as the carcinogens in cigarette smoke. And it must be said over and over again that at least in the United States, and I'm sure here too, if everyone quit smoking, 1/3 of all cancers would disappear. No more research needed, no more new drugs needed, just quit smoking. Now, once we know that there are 500 genes that control whether cells behave properly and grow properly, and that in a particular cancer there'll be a half dozen of these malfunctioning, that gives us targets. Targets to detect cancer earlier and targets for treating it better. And I believe that the reason that Dr. Schlesinger and I have received this award today is because we were one of the early few that began to develop an approach to cancer treatment targeting the abnormal gene products. And the one we share in common is the EGF receptor. And just a brief analogy. When you get into your car and put the key in the ignition and turn it, it sends an electrical signal that triggers everything that happens in a car. But if that key isn't in there, nothing happens. And cells work the same way. Cells have locks on their surface called receptors. And from the environment around the cell, there are keys. They're called growth factors. And when growth factors insert themselves into those receptors, that triggers a signal, not an electric signal, but a chemical signal that Dr. Schlesinger has studied extensively. And that signal is what turns on cells to divide. So in our laboratory, we decided to try to block that signal by putting a piece of chewing gum in the lock so the key couldn't get in. And that really is the way the antibody that we developed, called Erbitux, works. It binds to the receptor and prevents the key from entering. So this is one approach. Today, there are over 400 new cancer treatments in development at various stages, entering the clinic, attacking various genes and gene products, using our imagination, using new ways. Sometimes it's with an antibody. Sometimes, as with Dr. Schlesinger, it's with a drug. Sometimes it's with a gene, replacing a defective gene. Sometimes it's with an RNA molecule that blocks the function of the gene. But we're seeing a wonderful menu of new treatments developing, and I believe there is hope that many of these are going to work alone or in combination, as you heard in Dr. Schlesinger's visual presentation. So this is our prediction for the future. Lastly, my name is Mendelssohn. I'm often asked, am I related? And the answer is indirectly yes. Moses Mendelssohn married Fromette Guggenheim, and I am a direct lineal descendant in her family, Fromette Guggenheim's family, so someone in her family must have married another Mendelssohn to get me here. But I'm very proud to have an indirect relation to both Moses and Felix Mendelssohn. Again, thank you very much for this honor, and thank you very much for this wonderful ceremony.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mendelssohn. Thank you, Mr. Sanyas, for the exciting violin performance. Ladies and gentlemen, we conclude the ceremony with the singing of Hatikva, Israel's national anthem. Please rise.
כל עוד בלבב, כל עוד בלבב, כל עוד בלבב הומייה, עוד נפש יהודי הומייה, עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the 2006 Dan David Prize Award ceremony. Kindly remain standing while President Katsav and Mrs. Katsav are leaving the auditorium. אנא יישארו עומדים עד אשר כבוד הנשיא והגברת קצב יצאו מן האולם. Thank you. תודה. תודה רבה, כבוד הנשיא, תודה לגברת קצב. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again very much for participating in this celebration. Thank you once again. תודה.